Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the 2022 Senate elections. And this is my first prediction for February. And I actually think that these are really interesting because in 2020 we had we had North Carolina, Maine, Montana, and Iowa. I guess were viewed as the most competitive races. And in the end, Michigan, North Carolina, Arizona, and the Georgia runoffs were the most competitive. So that was, I think, my Senate prediction was flawed. I didn't get too many races wrong, but I had Montana being a lot closer than it was. I had Iowa being a lot closer than it was. I'm trying to think. I had Maine. I said Sarah Gaten was probably going to win that race. That did not age very well for me. That was, I think, everyone kind of swung and missed on the Maine Senate race. But it's a new year, and I'm going to try to perfect my predictions. So let's get started with the safer states for the Democratic Party. We have Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii, Colorado could be likely, but right now Biden won it by 13. I think Michael Bennett's going to probably win re-election by a similar margin. Illinois, Maryland. Okay, so last night I watched a regular politics video, and I think, I cringed when I heard this. He thinks Larry Hogan is going to run as an independent and win the seat by a safe margin. Okay, first of all, Larry Hogan has declined to run. Literally, right there on Wikipedia, you can look up the 2022 Maryland Senate race, and under the Republican candidates, declined, it says, I think, some representative, and then Larry Hogan. Larry Hogan is not going to run for Senate. He said he's not going to run for Senate. So, if he does run, it's probably more of a lean Democratic race, but right now it's pretty safe. New York is safe. If AOC beats Schumer in the primary, it's not going to be competitive. I mean, I heard Eagles say that it could be a likely margin if AOC beats Schumer in the primary. Nah. No matter who wins that primary, it's going to be safe. But I don't even think, I doubt AOC's going to primary Schumer because she'd probably lose. Connecticut should be safe. Vermont, if Phil Scott runs, it's more of a lean to Democrat race. But I think Vermont is pretty safe for the Democrats right now, unless Scott runs. Then it gets more competitive. But I don't think Patrick Leahy's going to retire, to be honest, even though he's pretty old. Now moving on towards safe Republican states, Idaho, Utah, the Dakotas. John Thune's probably going to get primary in South Dakota, that's for sure. Kansas should be safe. Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, South Carolina, and Kentucky. I forgot about Kentucky. I don't think Canada's going to run Missouri, so that should be pretty safe. If Canada runs, it's a lean D or it's a lean R race. If he doesn't, it's safe. If Chuck Grassley retires, it's likely R. If he stays, which he's probably going to, even though he's old, it's safe. Indiana, if Evan Bayh runs or Joe Donnelly runs, it's probably likely Republican to lean Republican. If not, it's safe. Ohio, since Portman retires, that's not necessarily safe. Also, I forgot. John Ossoff's seat is safe. They have that there still. So these are the competitive races, I guess. Some of them are more competitive than others, but yeah. So we're just gonna get started with our likely D states, and I don't think that there are any right now, but there are a couple likely R races. Starting with Alaska, I originally had this as safe Republican, but I'm moving it down to likely Republican, mostly because of the ranked choice voting system. I hadn't been thinking too much about that up until, I guess, I started reading more into this 2022 Senate race. Also, Murkowski is probably going to have shakier support with the Trump base because she's probably going to vote to convict Donald Trump. Actually, I think in a week from now, the trial is going to take place, so that'll be interesting, and that'll impact. I'll probably do a Senate prediction post trial. So yeah, but I think Alaska's going to be just like a 10 or 11 point margin from Murkowski. There's probably going to be some third party candidate, like a very right wing third party candidate, that could get like 5 to 10% of the vote, but we're going to have to see. Florida's also likely Republican. I mean, Marco Rubio, he might get primaried by, I guess, Ivanka, but if Ivanka wins the primary, it's more like tilt toss-up type state, but if Rubio wins the primary, which he's probably going to, it's likely Republican. I could honestly see him winning Miami-Dade. I wouldn't necessarily bet on it, but if a Democrat loses Miami-Dade, then that's really, really bad. So, yeah. Now, for our likely... Oh, and we have one more, the state of Ohio. You should note that one was coming. I mean, being realistic, Ohio's not going to flip. Tim Ryan is probably going to run. He's probably going to lose by like 4 or 5%, but I'm going to be generous to the Republicans because I did underestimate Donald Trump in Ohio in 2020 by like, I think I had him losing by 4, I had him winning by 4, he won by 8. So, yeah, but Ohio, I think it's going to stay red no matter who runs. It just depends on the margin. And also, Jim Jordan said he's not going to run for the seat, so the Republicans are probably going to nominate someone pretty normal, I guess. That's not too controversial, and I think Ohio's going to stay red. Now, the Republicans are at 47, the Democrats are at 46 right now. It's time for our lean Democratic states, and these are really the true competitive seats of this election. We have it's pretty even because we have 4 Democratic held seats and 3 Republican held seats. This is a pretty even Senate map. However, some of these seats are more competitive than others. I think the least competitive of these seats is Arizona. I think Arizona is going to stay blue. Really, I do. Okay, I sound like Dr. Seuss there. But I don't know who the Republicans are going to run. I mean, on one hand, they could run someone super moderate. Like, I don't even know who they're going to run if that's the case. But they could also run someone very populist, very pro-Trump, like Kelly Ward or Paul Gosar. I think Ward would probably lose by 5. Gosar would probably lose by 3 or 4. Because Gosar has been elected before, unlike Kelly Ward. So that's one way to look at it, but you could also say that Gosar hasn't really held statewide office, and Kelly's pretty popular. I mean, he outran Biden by over 2% in a pretty polarized environment, so I think he's going to hold probably by a little bigger of a margin than he did in 2020, so Mark Kelly's probably going to win re-election at this point. People who say that this race is tilt red, I really don't know what they're thinking. I don't know how they see a path to victory, especially after Arizona's been trending blue for so long. I mean, Doug Ducey probably could have beaten Kelly before Trump kind of threw him under the bus with trying to overturn the election results. So he kind of shot himself in the foot for that. The Republican Party, Trump kind of shot the Republican Party in the foot for that race. Now, I think that Nevada's also lean D. I mean, I think Arizona's actually going to vote to the left of Nevada. I think Kelly's probably going to win by 4 or 5% in this race, and I think Kathleen Cortez Masto is going to hold by a little under 3%. I think we're going to see a very similar coalition for Kathleen Cortez Masto over Biden. In Biden, I think she'll do a little better in Clark County. She'll probably because Biden won Clark County by 9. She'll probably win it by 12 or 13. She'll probably do about the same in Washoe County, but I think she'll do slightly worse in rural Nevada. I mean, actually, no, she'll probably do maybe a little better. Not because she's a better candidate for rural Nevada than Biden is, but because of the fact that I don't see whoever the Republicans run here getting the turnout that Trump got from the rural part of the state. The only area that I think that the Republican could improve on Trump's margins is with the Mormons. Like, obviously, the Mormons primarily they live in Utah, but they live in other states around it too, like Colorado, Idaho, Nevada, northern Arizona. So, like, rural Nevada, from Elko to White Pine to Lincoln County, that's where a lot of these Mormons live. And I think that they're going to, because they're Republicans, but they don't necessarily like Trump, as we saw with Evan McMullen. And I think that, these Republicans are probably going to vote for whoever runs against Kathleen Cortez Masto in 2022. So that's the only area where I think that Cortez Masto is going to do worse than Biden. But yeah, so I think Nevada's going to stay blue, though. Now moving on to the state of Georgia. I really do think Warnock's going to hold, especially with Stacey Abrams being on the ballot. She's probably going to run for governor, like 99% chance she runs for governor. And I think she's favored to beat Brian Kemp, especially after, the Democrats won both those races in runoffs. Midterms are higher turnout than runoffs, so that's good news for Democrats. Plus, who are the Republicans going to run? Because on one hand, they could run someone like, I guess, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who'd get crushed. But so that's a bad example. Marjorie Taylor Greene is hated by everyone except for people who believe in QAnon. But I think, they could run Doug Collins. I think he'd do pretty good with the Trump supporters, but he wouldn't do as well in the suburbs, which is what cost Kelly Loeffler her race. If she'd gotten Romney-type numbers in the suburbs, she would have just really crushed Warnock. So, yeah, but I think Warnock's going to hold because he's the incumbent. Plus, black turnout should be pretty high with him and Abrams on the ballot, who are both, I guess, inspirational black candidates. So, Georgia's probably going to hold for the Democratic Party. Now, given the Democrats the majority is the state of Pennsylvania, I think John Fetterman's going to win here. I really do. I mean, you can say it's tilt, but I'm going to put it as lean. I think Fetterman is going to definitely improve on Biden's numbers in the rural areas because whoever the Republicans run, excuse me, they're going to do worse in the rural areas than Trump because I don't see them getting the insane turnout that he got. Fetterman's also going to do better than Biden with the white working class. I mean, he has progressive policies which work in the Midwest, like Sherrod Brown, for example, Tammy Baldwin. They're all progressives, but they don't brand themselves as socialists. That's why AOC would lose here, but Sherrod Brown and John Fetterman wouldn't. So, when Fetterman says he fights for a $15 minimum wage, that's popular. But when AOC says that she's a socialist and that she wants the Green New Deal, that's not popular in Pennsylvania. There's a difference, even though they're very similar in policy. So, I do think that John Fetterman would win this race by around 2 to 3%. Probably by a little more than Biden, mostly because he improved in rural areas. He might do a little worse in the suburbs, but that's offset by, like I said, the rural areas. Most of the Trump supporters might not come out for whoever the Republicans run, because they have this dilemma where, like, on one hand, they can run a moderate who can appeal to the suburbs, but the Trump supporters would feel alienated by that. I can't talk. I don't know why. But on the other hand, they could run a very pro-Trump candidate who has no appeal to the suburbs and would, I guess, do all right with Trump supporters. So that's the dilemma that the Republicans have. Now, for the lean Republican states, I think New Hampshire is the first one. I really do think Kirsten is going to run for Senate. I would think it's a toss-up at this point. I really think he is. He's considering it. He's, I think the seat's going to flip. I think people on Twitter, I guess people on left-wing election Twitter like to say that if Sununu runs, it's a toss-up. If not, it's likely D. I agree that it's likely Democrat if Sununu doesn't run, but he's so popular. I mean, he won his governor race by like over 30 points. And I get that there's a difference between governor and Senate races. I mean, Steve Bullock and Phil Bredesen will tell you that, but like, still, he's so popular. He won by 30 points. In Montana, Steve Bullock only won by, I think, 5. And Montana is a redder state than New Hampshire is a bluer state, if that makes sense. So I think Sununu is going to beat Maggie Hassan. Hassan, she's a good candidate, but Sununu is just too popular, and he's probably going to win the Senate race. Now, I think Wisconsin also... Wait, no. Whoops. Oops, never mind. Now, going on to our tilt Republican states, you know what I was going to say. It's Wisconsin. That's a tilt Republican state. The Democrats don't really have anyone to run other than Ron Kind. It's kind of like the opposite of Pennsylvania. It's kind of like Pennsylvania in that no one has anyone to run. The Republicans have no one to run in Pennsylvania. If people say Ryan Costello, I don't think Ryan Costello is a good candidate. He has no appeal to the Trump supporters. But I think Wisconsin is going to stay right just as a result. We're going to have to see more data. This is just kind of me trying to make the safest prediction. And I think Wisconsin's just going to stay barely tilt Republican by under 1% just because it's Ron Johnson's seat. She might run again. He's probably going to. And in that case, it'll probably just stay Republican, even though he's not too popular. Now, our last seat, I think the true toss-up of this race is North Carolina. Jeff Jackson is a good candidate, but so is Mark Walker. And I think the state, which has it's a pure toss-up, but it has a tiny Republican tilt, is going to stay with the Republicans just barely. I think Wisconsin and North Carolina are going to be the closest Senate races, really. I mean, yeah, the Democrats are going to stay where they are. They each have one pickup. Pennsylvania for the Democrats, New Hampshire for the Republicans. I think that the Democrats can hold New Hampshire, even if Sununu doesn't run. They can also maybe flip Wisconsin and flip North Carolina. That's kind of their best case scenario that actually, I guess, makes sense. Now, the Republicans, their best case scenario is probably flipping Nevada, flipping Georgia, and holding Pennsylvania. So the best case scenario for each party is, not Bluta, is probably 53 seats. That's each party's ceiling. So we're going to have to see, guys. But thank you all for watching this video. Please do leave a like and subscribe if you have not already. Turn on post notifications so you never miss one of my uploads. Check out all the links in the description. And I'll see you all in the next one. Oh, by the way, dislike if you didn't like the video.